So the latest dash camera to be sent to me by a company for review is this. This is the Savv M35 dash cam. Actually, both of these are the Savv M35 dash cameras. It ends up they make a couple different versions, actually 3 different versions of this camera, and they sent me 2. This guy right here, this is the M35-S2, and this is the M35-F. Now the difference is that the F is kind of your standard 2-channel dash camera. It's got the camera on the front, and then it also has a camera mounted in the back of the car. Now the S2 version of the M35, it is a 3-channel dash camera. And what that means is that instead of having a single camera in the back of the car, it actually has these 2 cameras that you mount on the sides of the car. Now, when I saw these, I was like, oh man, I don't want to have to put these big ugly chrome things on the side of my car. It's going to look so ghetto. But it actually doesn't look that bad. The Jeep here is a pretty big car, so these things don't stand out, and there's already so much chrome on this car that those things really kind of blended in. So I was actually pretty happy once I mounted them. They really don't look bad at all. I would never put these on my other cars, like the Aston Martin and the Jaguar, no way. But on the Jeep, I don't really have any problem with it. Now, both of these cameras come with several things. They come with a parking cable. This is the hardwire kit that you plug directly into your fuse box. I am not using that. Instead, I am using the obligatory 12-volt cigarette lighter cable that also comes with it. The only problem here is that I wasn't able to test parking mode at all because parking mode doesn't work with this. It comes with the instruction manual and a mount. One thing to note about all the mounts is that they did not supply an extra set of sticky pads. So what's on here is what's on here, and once you've placed this, that's it. If you have to pull it off and readjust it or move it to a different car or whatever, you're going to have to go find yourself some additional 3M sticky tape. The other thing that it comes with, which is kind of interesting, is this. This is a little remote button. And most dash cameras on them somewhere will have a button that you press, like say the car in front of you suddenly starts rolling over and bursts into flames. Well, you want to save that recording. So you will normally press the button on the dash camera to say, save this recording into permanent storage. I don't want it to get overwritten. Well, the M35 does not actually have that kind of button on it. Matter of fact, there aren't any buttons anywhere on the M35. There's just an on-off switch and an SD card slot, and then some inputs on the top. So instead, what they have is this little battery-powered remote button. And the idea is it also has sticky stuff on the bottom, and when you press it once, it'll cause the dash camera to take a photo. If you press it and hold it down for 3 seconds, it will tell the dash camera, okay, save this recording. I do have a few beefs with this little thing. I mean, it's a great idea. Beef number 1 is that the way it's held together on the sticky thing is with kind of a bayonet style attachment. Unfortunately, it does not click into place, and it just falls right out really easily. It's a good thing that they sent me 2 of these cameras because I have 2 of these buttons. My first button fell down. I was holding and it just fell right off, and it fell in the bottomless pit crack between the seat and the center console. So someday I'll find it down there. But anyway, it's not built particularly well. It just won't stay together. The other thing that I have a beef with is that in the heat of the moment, if something crazy happens in front of you and you want to save that recording, I don't want to have to hold this button down for 3 seconds. The default should be that 1 button press saves the video, and maybe a double tap or holding it down for 3 seconds does the photo. I really don't know why anybody would want to take a photo instead of a video, but there's that. And then of course the third thing is that how many people really want to stick a big plastic button somewhere on their car somewhere? I mean, odds are you're never going to press this, or if you do, it's going to be pretty rarely. And I kind of like my car. I really don't want this stuck anywhere. So for now, I've just kind of had it sitting kind of just down in the cup holder for testing, but I would never mount this anywhere. But anyway, it's a cool idea. Both cameras also come with a quick start guide and an instruction manual. Well, the funny thing is that the quick start guide that came with the S2, the 3-channel version of the camera, it's actually the quick start guide for the F. So it tells me how to mount the rear camera, which doesn't come with the S2. So I don't know if that was just a mistake on this or if that's how all of them are, but it's the wrong quick start thing. Additionally, the manual for this is bad. I'll just put it that way. It's lacking a lot of information. I had to do some Googling in order to find out a few things about this, but you know, who reads these anyways, right? Well, I actually did have to read them for a couple things, or at least I was trying to find some information, but the manual needs a little bit of work. One other thing to note about both versions of the M35 is that they do not have built-in GPS. If you've watched my other dash camera reviews, you know that I actually prefer my dash cameras not to have built-in GPS. I don't really want a record of my speed. So these do not have that, but they do have right here a little jack for plugging in an external GPS unit should you want to. Okay, now let's talk about the LCD screen on the M35. I'm just going to say this straight out. This is the worst quality LCD screen I've seen on any piece of electronic equipment in a really, really long time. And let me show you why. As soon as you start looking at it from the side, let's take a look onto the right side here, you see that it immediately, the image goes kind of X-ray vision looking, right? You cannot see what's going on here. If I turn it the other way and start looking at it from the left-hand side, it doesn't go X-ray vision. Instead, it kind of gets washed out. The problem is that, I mean, a dash cam, I'm in a left-hand drive vehicle here, so my dash camera is always going to be mounted up there. I will always be looking at this camera from a slightly left side view. When I'm driving with this camera, the image looks super washed out. It's very hard for me to see what's going on this screen when I'm driving. Now, if I had a right-hand drive vehicle like they have in, say, Japan or the UK or anywhere else like that, well, then I'd be looking at the camera from the right-hand side. And I wouldn't be able to see anything at all because it goes totally X-ray vision effect. So that's kind of a major flaw. I mean, they used a really poor quality LCD screen, and it's a shame because the screen is actually pretty high res. I mean, the resolution is nice. And I do like the touch screen. The touch screen on this is excellent. It's very responsive. I like the menu system. You know, the menu system on here is good, super responsive, it's easy to understand. All of that's great, but you just can't see anything on here when you're driving. Even when you look at it straight on, because your left eye and your right eye are not, you know, they're both kind of on the sides a little bit, your right eye and your left eye see a slightly different image because of this weird effect that you get from side to side, so it's kind of strange looking. But anyway, you know, they kind of botched the screen a little bit, but the menu system is really actually quite nice. Both the S2 and the F have 1080p forward-facing cameras. It records at 30 frames per second. The data rate is about 10 megabits per second, and that's pretty standard of most 1080p dash cameras. But 10 megabits per second is really the bare minimum that you can record 1080p and get anything usable out of it. It depends a lot on the codec being used. Different cameras have better codecs. The codec in this camera, I don't think is doing as good a job as other 10 megabit per second 1080p cameras that I've seen. Now that being said, sometimes the video footage looks perfectly good. Sometimes the exposure is good, the clarity is good, there's no compression artifacting going on. It looks fine. But other times, it doesn't look that great. There will oftentimes be severe, and I mean really severe, video compression artifacting going on. This happens a lot if there's a lot going by on the side of the road, like trees or signs or things. The video artifacting can sometimes get so bad that not only can't you read the text on a sign, but sometimes you don't even know that there is text on a sign because the compression artifacting basically makes it go away. But other times, all of the signs, all of the license plates will be crystal clear. So it just kind of comes and goes. The dynamic range is also, you know, very unpredictable with this. Sometimes it's great, and other times you get what appears to be horrifically bad dynamic range. Now, this camera has supposedly WDR, wide dynamic range. I would strongly disagree with that. I would say this camera has terrible dynamic range most of the time. You'll be driving along, the exposure doesn't look right, yet the clouds will be blown out, the shadows will be crushed. As far as the night footage goes, well, it's a bit darker and it's a bit more contrasty than the footage I get off of other dash cameras that I have owned and tested. Now, in all fairness, it's extra dark out here this evening. It's the whole COVID thing. There aren't that many cars on the road. It's not an urban area with lots of light pollution and other stuff lighting it up. So it is kind of dark out. So I have to give it a little bit of slack. But I can tell you that when I was driving this, my eye could see a whole lot more than the camera is showing you now. With my other dash cameras, I'm usually a little more impressed with just how much detail it picks up in those dark areas, you know, off to the side of the road where the headlights aren't hitting. So unfortunately, I have to say that night mode on this camera is not great. It's usable, not the best though. Okay, now let's talk about the rear camera, starting with the single rear camera on the M35-F. Now, the rear camera on both models is 720p versus the front camera, which is 1080p. On the F model, the single rear camera records at 7.1 megabits per second. And that's okay, you know, it's kind of probably the minimum setting, but it's generally going to be acceptable. But when you look at this footage, you'll notice that there's kind of a yellow-green tint to it. Once again, it seems underexposed. Now, granted, I probably could have aimed the rear camera down just a little bit more to capture less sky. That might have helped a little bit with the exposure, but nevertheless, the camera still has the same poor dynamic range issues as the front camera. Even if it's exposing for the sky, that means the clouds should at least be exposed correctly, but they're not. The clouds are blown out at the same time that all the shadows are crushed. Things look very dark. So it still has a terrible dynamic range and it has exposure issues. So overall, you know, like the front camera, the overall image quality of the rear camera is mediocre at best. Okay, so let's take a look at the side cameras that are on the S2. Now, the first thing you notice right here is that the video is upside down. So let me go ahead and rotate this 180 degrees in my video editor so that we can actually see the video. Now, the reason that this is upside down is because, well, it ends up there's a left and right camera. I didn't realize this because both cameras look exactly the same. They do not have any kind of labeling or marking on them indicating, hey, this one goes on the left side of the car and this one goes on the right side of the car. For that matter, the instruction manual says absolutely nothing about using the side cameras. It says nothing about mounting them or anything to that effect. I actually had to go onto Google and find a photo of how somebody else had mounted their side cameras because I didn't even know where on the car I was supposed to put these. So apparently I got it backwards. I put the left camera on the right side and the right camera on the left side, and that has resulted in all of my footage being upside down. I tried swapping the input jacks thinking maybe that'll help swap them, but it didn't. The only way I can fix it is in post-production because there's no setting in the camera anywhere to rotate these images. Once the cameras were mounted, that was that, because they didn't supply an extra set of sticky pads, so I couldn't remove them and move them, you know, and put them back on. I left them where they were. I just have to rotate the images. Now, if you look closely, that's not the end of it. In addition to me having to rotate the images 180 degrees because I mixed left and right up, the images are also mirrored horizontally. They're flipped. Now, this has nothing to do with using the left camera on the right side or the right camera on the left side. This appears to simply be a software glitch. The images are reversed. All of the text that you see is backwards. So in post-production, I have to go in and flip the images left and right. I have to mirror them in order to get it looking like it's supposed to actually look. Now, this is strange because on the M35-F, the rear camera is fine. It's not mirrored. It works, you know, as it should. But for some reason, the side cameras have both of their images flipped horizontally, and I don't know why. I think it's just a bug. So on the rear camera, the bit rate was about 7.1 megabits per second, right? Well, on the side cameras here, the bit rate is only 2.6 megabits per second. It's about 1/3 the bit rate of the single rear camera. And what that means is that the video on the side cameras is horribly poorly compressed. You've got blocky artifacts everywhere. It's just a muddy mess. You cannot make out details whatsoever. Now, the good thing, at least, is that the color appears to be a little bit better on these side cameras for whatever reason. But the resolution and video quality is just terrible at paltry 2.1 megabits. Now, on the good side, you can at least see what's going on in general. So if somebody, sideswipes you, you don't need a lot of resolution to be able to prove that. It's going to be there and it's fine. I don't think these are the best cameras for a regular car or even my Jeep here. I think that these side cameras would be much more useful on a bus or a large semi-truck, something with a lot of blind spot area between the front and the rear of the vehicle. But in a regular car, I think that the rear camera, the single rear camera, is probably a better bet, because with these side cameras, yeah, it shows you what's on the side, but it also makes it more difficult to see what's directly behind you. Okay, so there's one other thing that I haven't brought up until now that needs to be said, and that's that this is missing one really, really critical feature, and that's battery or capacitor backup. This camera appears to have neither, and that basically means that when the power is cut to this, the power is cut to this. If it's writing a file, that file will not get completed, and it will usually be corrupted. I'm using the 12-volt cigarette adapter for this. It might be different with the parking mode hardwire adapter, but I don't think it is. Every time I turn off my car and it cuts power to the camera, whatever file was being written at that time is corrupted. Every now and then, the file won't be corrupted, but things about the file will be wrong, like it'll have a completely incorrect timestamp on the file. But most of the time, the file is unusable and it is corrupt. And the problem is if you're in a serious accident and your camera becomes disconnected from the power, or it's such a bad wreck that you just lose power to the car entirely, well, it means it's not going to record or save video of the incident. It's not just going to not save video of the incident, but because these are 1-minute long files, it probably is not going to save any of the video leading up to the incident. So that to me is a serious, serious problem, because that's really one of the main reasons you get a dash camera, right? If you're in a serious wreck, you need to be sure that you have a document of it. And there's no guarantee without some sort of battery or capacitor backup that that will happen. Pretty much every modern dash camera made these days has a capacitor backup in it. This one does not. So that's a problem. Luckily, the M35 does have built-in Wi-Fi. And that means that if you're out on the road and something happens and you need to get one of the recordings off of the dash cam, you can. And you can do it by using the Dashcam 3 app on the phone. No, it's called Dashcam 3. It's not called the Savv, anything like that. As a matter of fact, I first tried to go on the App Store and I searched for Savv and nothing came up. So they forgot to put that as a keyword in here for the app. But anyway, in the manual, luckily it told me which one to get. So I got the Dashcam 3 app, and it's very easy to connect. So on the camera itself, when you go in, there is a Wi-Fi button here at the bottom. You tap Wi-Fi, you agree to do whatever.
Connecting the device.
There you go. Wi-Fi is now on the device. You go back to the phone, you go to your Wi-Fi settings, and you look for Dashcam 3. You connect to Dashcam 3, and there you go. Now you can just go back out, and you're now in and you are connected. So down here we can go to settings. Now the camera likes to chat a lot as you go between the various menus, by the way. It's kind of annoying, but anyway, I love the menu system on the dash camera. I said that before at the beginning. It's very responsive, it's very intuitive, but the settings are very, very limited on the camera itself. There's not a whole lot that you can configure on the camera's menu system. you have to use the mobile app to do most of the configuration. So here, in the app settings, you have access to every option that the camera has. You even have access to the firmware updates. Everything's here. It works pretty well. I'm not going to go through all these settings because they're all pretty much self-explanatory.
Start recording.
Every time you go out, it starts recording again. And then we're going to go to live view so we can view what the camera sees. Okay, whoops, here. I'll show you something a little more interesting. There's my camera. So from here, you can toggle through all the different cameras that are connected. Now, right now I'm using the M35-F, so it's the 2-camera version. At the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a little camera swap icon. If you tap it, let's see if it works. Okay, it's showing me the rear view camera here. You're looking at my garage door. Now, I think that they fixed a problem in the latest firmware. When I first got this, the firmware that came on this camera, when I would tap that button, it didn't work most of the time. Nothing happened. Matter of fact, this is really why my 2 side cameras on the S2 are backwards, because I was trying to look through here to see those cameras as I was installing them on the side of the car, but I could not get the app to show me the side cameras. So I guessed, and put them in there. I installed them without being able to see what I was doing. Had I been able to get this to work, I probably would have noticed that the cameras were upside down and done something about it, but at the time I couldn't do that. But anyway, since the firmware update that I installed on here, this button has been working. So I think that problem has been fixed. Anyway, so we can go back out. We can also take a look at the recordings that we have either already downloaded or that are on the device. So we go to Dashcam Video. It says end recording again. And this is just a list of everything. So here's a list of all just the normal regular recordings while driving. There's event recordings. Those are, if there's an impact or something. Manual recordings, those happen when you press the little button on the remote clicker. Parking mode recordings, I don't have parking mode turned on because I'm not using the hardwire kit. But anyway, it's all here. It all works rather well. It's quick and responsive. The app gets a definite thumbs up. I think they did a very good job with this.
Start recording.
It does talk a lot though. So the Savv M35-S2 goes for about $279 on Amazon. The M35-F, the 2-channel version, that goes for about $229 on Amazon. Quite honestly, in my opinion, that's a lot of money for a dash camera that does not have GPS, does not have a capacitor backup, and quite frankly has questionable video quality. You be the judge based on everything I've shown you. I would say that the S2 with the 2 side cameras is a pretty useful thing if you've got a bus or a large truck. But as far as a regular car goes, I think that there are better multi-channel dash cams out there for less money. You be the judge. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.